Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar entitled How to Prepare for Holistic Rapid Response. This webinar is part of a special series of educational webinars to help you prepare for tomorrow. Please visit our website at teamlewis.com for recordings of previous webinars and to sign up for future sessions. My name is Sarah, and I will be the moderator for today's event. A little bit about Lewis and who we are. We are a global integrated communications agency, and we're the largest employee-owned agency in our sector. We provide full PR, marketing, and digital services with 30 offices across the globe. You can find out more by visiting us at teamlewis.com. Now, I'd like to introduce you to today's speakers. First up, we have Dara Sklar. As VP of Public Relations here at Lewis, Dara coordinates team efforts across the globe to ensure creative approaches and a steady stream of media opportunities that map back to business goals. For 2 decades, she has driven communications campaigns for a broad range of enterprise and consumer technology companies with a focus on cybersecurity. Dara spearheads the development of rapid response communications across earned, owned, and paid media. And next, we have Nicole Allen. As VP of Digital Marketing and Lewis Pulse, she serves as the strategic lead across content, organic, and paid social programs. Nicole is passionate about developing comprehensive campaigns that tell compelling stories for the right audience at the right time in their journey. Nicole also works with high-profile executives to build out their personal thought leadership platforms across social channels, helping to add transparency to brands and to increase general market awareness around own topics of interest. And with that, I will pass the presentation over to Dara and Nick.
Welcome. So our agenda for today is diving into what is holistic rapid response. We imagine that you're here because either you are doing part of rapid response today, but not across all of the levers that you could pull, or it's brand new. So we'll walk you through the process from start to finish. Who are the people that need to be involved? What is the best process? What are the tools? And a step-by-step action kit and checklist to get going yourself. First off, why rapid response? Rapid response is a little bit different than crisis communications. Crisis communications is when all eyes are on you because something really bad has just happened and you need to get out there and rectify the situation. Rapid response, there may not be as much urgency internally, but there is a huge opportunity. So similar to crisis communications, all eyes are somewhere, and there's an opportunity for you to be part of that conversation and turn the attention on yourself. So some of the different types are breaking news. These are things you just didn't see coming, like blackout at the Super Bowl. We never would have known that was gonna happen. Oreo jumped into it with their tweet that was heard by everyone. So here's an opportunity to generate highly relevant demand just by jumping into the conversation. Competitor news is another opportunity to find new customers. How can you turn the conversation and attention to your products instead? And I work with a lot of cybersecurity companies in which industry news is a daily opportunity to demonstrate expertise and thought leadership.
And beyond just the benefits to your brand's news cycle and taking a holistic approach to rapid response, there are a lot of benefits in just being proactive and timely in your communications and marketing approach that extend out across your audience and into the broader market. So by keeping a beat on these trending topics, you can really meet your target audience where they're the most engaged and share conversations and experiences with them that they care about. Quite often these experiences actually happen on social platforms. They happen with candid statements by engaging with a targeted community and serving content that's really timely. Even something as simple as having social share cards at the ready with tips for how to detect whether or not you were affected by the next heartbleed as a consumer can help engage with an audience beyond your brand's base. This kind of interaction really helps add to a brand's transparency. And with trust in brands on the decline, transparency is currency that we as marketers must value. So now that we've introduced the importance and positive outcome of rapid response, let's talk a little bit about how you get there. For starters, we need to break down the barriers that stand in our way today. For many of today's organizations, internal teams actually operate in silos. So for example, let's just say that I'm working on the corporate communications team in this particular scenario, and HR Tech Conference is coming up, and I want to run with a thought leadership push about how AI is fueling the future of work. I work on some canned commentary coming from a subject matter expert or an executive. I push out a corporate blog post and I get to pitching. This is a nice idea in theory, right? But the problem is, because I'm in a siloed organization, my biddable team wasn't in on the push. They're not targeting HR Tech Conference related keywords, and neither is my paid social team. And so because I didn't have visibility into the work that my campaigns team has been doing even, I also didn't tie my blog post back into the gated white paper on the state of work that they produced last month, which would still be relevant. So in this scenario, all of my teams here were operating as different teams, pulling our own levers individually. There's a general lack of communication, and the silos mean that we can't effectively carry out a rapid response program. So that's the problem, the silos, but what's the solution? How do we really break down those silos and achieve holistic results? So in order to pull together a truly holistic rapid response or real-time content program, it's critical that the internal teams and functions work together toward one common goal. And real-time content needs to live at the heart of everything those teams are doing. So another example, if it's Shark Week and your target audience is really buzzing about, sharks and the excitement around that topic, the blog post that you draft about how to throw your own Shark Week watch party should be accompanied by social images. Your community manager on your social team should be surprising and delighting that audience across social platforms with real-time engagement, maybe even a tweet chat. And you should be sharing relevant influencer content, pitching a unique angle to the press, sponsoring the blog post with native and other paid support. So if all of those levers and units really work in tandem, you're going to achieve holistic results. So again, we've talked about the problem, the silos. We've highlighted the solution, which is one unit all working in tandem, pulling levers together. So here's how we get there. And keep in mind that all of these processes need to happen relatively quickly. Rapid response is about really pivoting to respond to trends and news in real time. So a Newsjack action kit, as we call it, really hits 6 key different factors to success. First, as with any campaign, rapid response or not, planning has to happen. You've got to lay that groundwork. From there, and this piece, in my opinion, is one of the most important parts, comes active audience listening and research. You have to know what's happening across communities and markets in order to identify relevant opportunities to really insert your brand in an authentic way. And when an opportunity does arise, then it's time to turn on your content engine. Paid, earned, shared, owned, it's all covered between the content that you're creating in this process and then the amplification of that content.
So once you've created that compelling content, it's time to get it out there across channels. And then you can extend it even further with paid media. Let's not stop there. Once content is out there, it's performing, we need to watch how it's doing and pivot and change with the conversation. Also, get ready to prepare for the next round of your rapid response. So now we've given a really quick overview of that action kit. We're going to dive into deep elements of all 6 of these steps so that you have a specific checklist of what to do when the news breaks. In terms of time frame, Nicole mentioned you got to be fast. We're talking 2 hours from when that news hits, you see that conversation happening, to when it's already out there. How are we going to do it? Well, as Nicole said, laying the groundwork and preparing is really critical. And this you can take a lot longer. So really dive into what are your business goals. The breaking news elements really need to be highly relevant to you, that you can offer a fresh perspective, and also it's going to be meaningful to the products that you're selling, to the campaigns that you're putting out, that all of those pieces are going to come together. One way to do this is to choose issues to own. We recommend 3 to 4 issues to own that you can really build out what is your point of view on this, and start building out some canned commentary, some creative imagery, some blogs. If you have some general tip guidelines. Those are posts that when breaking news hits, you can drive traffic that way. It's also time to determine what your budget is going to be for any paid campaigns, and even QA some of your bid or goal campaigns. Make sure that you have your UTM codes ready, you know what sites you're going to be targeting, and set up your retargeting pixels in advance. So a lot of preparation to lay that groundwork, but that's really going to help as you start listening.
Yep, exactly. So after that groundwork is laid, it's time to build your framework and research. So this starts with listening and identifying your audience and trends that you care about. So when we refer to an audience, we're actually talking about specific individuals who are having conversations about a topic or a subject area. Who makes up this audience? Is it IT decision makers, system administrators, gamers? From there, you're going to want to actually drill down and identify the influencers and media outlets that that specific audience cares about and where they're sharing content from. You'll want to track and identify the keywords that they're using to frame certain conversations and their specific interests. Even the basics like analyzing and understanding your brand's owned social audience, which can be done natively in most primary social platforms in their backend analytics dashboards, even something like that is key to honing in on who makes up your brand's captive audience. And this baseline understanding will really help you to take a more informed approach to listening that just goes beyond manual searching and Google Alerts, which you should have on as well.
So in addition to the real-time listening, there are some news events that you can plan in advance for. So once you have your 3 to 4 issues to own, look at past headlines. When of those have come up? Oftentimes, news cycles follow predictable patterns. You can look at, from a seasonal perspective, we just had spring break. Now tax time is coming up. All of the scams around taxes, that's the same content that you could probably resurface from last year and update with today's latest threads. So, and tips. So you can also look at investors and analyst predictions. What are the technology trends that are going to be happening? Where are the markets going? Look at your company's roadmap. What is the vision, and map those things together to start at least putting in some guidelines of what you might want to jump on. And then there's other opportunities to predict news events. You might not know what someone's quarterly earnings report is going to be or an economic report, but you know that they're probably coming and you can keep an eye on them and be ready to jump into the conversation.
Right. So to reiterate what Dara mentioned about picking your business issues to own, if let's say WannaCry hits a major airline and you're not that major airline, you need to decide, is it a relevant topic to your market? How about to your desired audience? And more importantly, most importantly of all, to your organization. Whether it's a tweet that's sent out from a corporate handle, a list of keywords that you're leveraging for your paid targeting, a banner ad, a blog post, you get the picture. Whatever real-time content is produced must not only be timely, but be relevant across those audience segments and really ring true to your brand's core. So once you've identified that sort of sweet spot where your real-time content can live, it's time to actually create it. Think about developing content that's easily digestible and can create a sort of surround sound feel. Your brand point of view should be sliced into commentary, creative social elements, blog posts, bylines, LinkedIn articles, ad copy and creative. It can run the gamut. Everything in this content engine can be used across a variety of mediums. And commentary can be quoted on social. Blogs and bylines can be shared and promoted. And the creative that you're developing can be blasted in email campaigns or used as banner ads. It's important to keep in mind as well that on average, B2B decision makers consume anywhere between 7 to 12 pieces of content before they actually consider making a purchase. For consumers, that habit can hover around 3 to 5 touch points with the brand. So the likelihood of really extending your reach when you're tying your point of view to a trend only expands when the content that you're turning around and creating is actually activated across a variety of platforms.
So you created your content, it's time to get it out there. One of the elements that Nicole mentioned was commentary. And so you have your general issue to own, you have the breaking news, but what exactly are you going to say? We have seen that three types of commentary get the most traction. And those are analogies, data, and being bold. A great example for analogy is that when you can take something that's fairly technical, like a vulnerability in IBM Linux 1 Emperor, and say, for application security, the Emperor has no close. And you can definitely continue to build on analogies as the news breaks, but also it's great to insert data points, how you can be that trusted resource for media and also for your target audiences. Another example is taking a bold stance. We noticed that a company was called out another company in a speech, and while that wasn't getting news coverage, it was getting a lot of social media conversation. So a really wise move this company took was to go ahead and blog and say, hey, that's not true. This is the reality of the situation, and drive media to that blog, which then, in fact, got a whole bunch of attention. Be willing to take a bold stance. Another comment that recently got a lot of coverage was, we are all complicit. We have all reaped the benefits of an ecosystem that prioritizes speed to market over security. So don't be afraid to call it out. But I've talked a lot about commentary that works well. What's most important that it's not just about commentary. There are so many levers to pull, and what's most important is that your commentary and your social strategy are aligned, and then that you're also doing paid targeting to make sure that all of your audiences are hearing your point of view.
Right, so to expand on that amplification step in this action kit, there are a few paid specific levers to be considered here. So first, we've got paid social. Target influencers, friendlies, keywords, get really granular, or as granular as you can here, and keep it specific to your topic that you're trying to own. If there's an influencer who's tweeting about this topic avidly, he or she should be included in your targeting parameters. It might even be worth promoting their own content and adding your brand's point of view on top of it if you're a little bit short for owned content on your own. With search, anticipate what your audience is searching for, and remember that relevance here is really key. For native advertising, this can be a really cost-effective way to reach a lot of eyeballs with your brand's point of view and the owned content that you're producing. So take into consideration a site's look and feel when you're creating your ads and headlines, because you don't want there to be a huge differentiation between the content you're placing and the site that it's living on. And finally, for display, hit your audiences where they're consuming content the most. And again, this is data that can be uncovered during your research and audience listening practices. So in terms of what you need, a lot of this really goes back to laying the groundwork. So consider getting pre-approval on all things budget. We actually recommend having a bucket set aside each quarter, month, year, however you're planning your budget, that you can tap into for real-time activation. Make sure that your tags and pixels are in place and that all imagery and content is pre-drafted as best you can, and of course, pre-approved.
So you have all of your stories out there, your campaigns are running, now what? Don't stop now. This is the time to listen and watch and monitor very carefully. Conversations rapidly change in today's news cycle, and you need to update your handles, adjust your keywords with them. So keep an eye on and be ready to pivot. Also, this is a great time to say, what were we missing? What are the social assets? What are the creative imagery that we want to have next time around? Update your commentary bank, be ready to roll. But also, you've just identified a bunch of new influencers, new audiences, great time to look at how can you best retarget them. Work with your campaigns team to say, okay, they were interested in this, what else can we use? So that this process keeps going and going.
And to be successful in this feedback loop, it really goes down to breaking down those silos, right? Because if you have all this information that you're feeding back into your process, none of it's going to matter if you're operating in silos across your organization.
So what does this all look like from a timeline perspective? We talked about Real-time audience and monitoring, you're going to be doing that every single day. And then the clock starts. You flag that news, the conversation opportunity, you jump right in. Within 30 minutes, we hope that you have that commentary drafted, you figured out your relevant search ad copy, you know what your site URLs are already, what you're going to drive people, you've done some prep work and legwork there, and you're ready to go with budget.
So around the hour mark, this is when you really want to have approval on all short form copy. Ad copy, social copy, canned commentary. If it's less than a paragraph, it should be approved by now. It's okay if blogs take a bit longer, that's to be expected, of course, but you should also have your tagging parameters in place at this point and any retargeting and campaigns set up and in QA mode. From there, amplifications should really be your focus, publishing that owned content, monitoring for coverage and engagement opportunities, starting to add in relevant banner ads and turning on native advertising. And finally, remember that there is an ongoing component to rapid response. So continuing that feedback loop, reporting, and refining your strategy for next time.
We hope you've learned today and walked away with a checklist to start your own rapid response process holistically across the organization, and excited to see what comes out of it. Also, happy to answer your questions.
Great, thank you guys so much. Thanks, Dara and Nicole, for that. We can take some time for questions now. Just a reminder, if you haven't done so already, please be sure to submit your questions by clicking the Q&A button in the taskbar. It looks like we do have just a few questions that have come in, so we can get started. The first question I have here is, what sorts of tools can you use for audience and keyword listening?
That's a great question, and I think it does depend a little bit on what your budget and organization size looks like. A couple of really cost-effective platforms that we've seen are Sprout Social. Sprout also recently acquired Simply Measured, so we're interested to see what happens as they continue to expand their analytics and listening platform there. Another good one is BuzzSumo, also very cost-effective, a great way to monitor not only headlines that are trending within a specific keyword set, but also see the volume of shares coming in on social. A couple of more robust tools that you could consider using might be Crimson Hexagon, Sysomos, Synthesio, but these are definitely more robust and come with a heftier price tag.
And then, of course, Google News is a great
yes.
way you could set up. It's pretty basic and free, and keep an eye on news alerts or catch anything breaking.
Yeah.
Great. Next question here is, what is the biggest challenge to a smooth, rapid response?
So the biggest challenge that I often see is not moving fast enough, and people really get bogged up in having the right words, the perfect words, the right commentary. But really, if you takes you 3 or 4 hours, you're already too late. The news cycles moved so quickly. So that's why that laying the groundwork part is so important, to decide, what is basically your point of view on those 3 or 4 issues, but also to have a really clear approval process. So who is it that can sign off? Maybe the CEO doesn't need to read the quote before it goes out. That you have some blog posts that can be approved by somebody really quickly, and let them know, we expect this back in 30 minutes or less. And I'm also finding a lot of executives want to be texted. So really moving off of email, texting, moving this to a real-time process of, hey, you just got this, I need you to look at it and get it back to me, and really practice on keeping this fast, because time is of the essence.
And from a creative standpoint and a social standpoint, with approvals in mind, this is where developing canned imagery in advance, so that all you need to do is just overlay a quote on top of it, really comes into play. The worst thing that can happen, and we see it happen all the time, is if the right people don't give approvals, or there's not a clear chain of command in place, something goes live and it has to be taken down. And that's just money and time out the door.
You can also place retargeting pixels on your site beforehand.
Yeah.
Great. We have a few more questions here. Nicole, this one might be for you. What's the best way to track or identify hashtags?
That's a great question. Manually definitely is a good way to do it within Twitter's platform. There's also a number of complementary tools that I mentioned earlier Tweet reach is one of them. We tend to use more robust platforms as an agency. As I mentioned, Crimson Hexagon is the current one that we use to track those hashtags. You can also do that in Sprout Social in their analytics platform. They actually have a pretty decent listening component to that platform where you can track trending hashtags across social platforms.
Great. And then we've got another social related question. Are there any paid social media channels you think would work better than others?
I think it really depends on the nature of the content and the audience that you're trying to reach, and also your budget. As I'm sure most of you are well aware, LinkedIn is definitely not the most cost-effective platform if you're simply looking for reach and you don't really have a very clear audience defined. If that's the case, then I would definitely look more to tools like Twitter or even Outbrain and Taboola, where you're trying to drive large quantities of eyeballs to your own content and your site. If you do have a very specific target audience in mind and you're targeting IT decision makers with highly valuable content, then definitely consider LinkedIn. But to Dara's point earlier, make sure that whatever platforms you're leveraging, you do have those retargeting pixels in place on your site, because a huge missed opportunity is if you put all of this effort into the developing the content and put this budget behind it, and then you're not able to recapture and retarget those audiences later with content that might be relevant to them and actually turn them into potential customers.
Great. And then I think we've got one final question here. What if I have a limited budget and team? Where should I start?
That is a really good question. And I would say that you can start with simply drafting a blog post. Like, you see rapid news happening, monitoring, keeping an eye out. You should be doing that anyway. But then coming up quickly with what is that story that you want to tell, because that can be reused really across all the channels.
Yeah, definitely. Just focusing on getting that content in place and slicing and dicing as much as you possibly can. A blog is more than just a blog. A piece of canned commentary is more than just a piece of canned commentary. Those things can be turned into quote cards. They can be turned into other pieces of content that you're pushing out across social platforms, across your own corporate platform. You can take a corporate blog post, cut it down a little bit, and actually turn it into a LinkedIn blog post where you're then driving back to your corporate blog. So there are definitely ways to get creative with that content and creative with your budget.
Yeah, and then send journalists to look at your blog post as well. You grab those comments there, so you're really playing then across all fields.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Thank you guys so much. I think it looks like that's all the time we have for today. If we didn't get to your question, we will be sure to follow up with you individually. On the screen here, on the next screen, you'll see Dara and Nicole's contact info. Please feel free to reach out to them directly with any questions you might have. Also, we have a few more webinars coming up in the series, so to learn more, please visit our events page on our website at teamlewis.com. Thank you all very much for joining today's session. As mentioned at the start of the webinar, we'll send everyone an email with the link to the recording and the slides of today's presentation. Thanks again for joining us today, and we hope to see you next time.